The town of Greystone was a place where whispers traveled faster than the wind. Children dared one another at night to linger by the tracks, and old men muttered about things best left forgotten. For in Greystone, every year at the stroke of midnight on the last night of September, the air trembled with an echo of steel, and impossible arrived, a train that should not exist. The tracks leading out of Greystone ended abruptly in a wilderness of brambles and stone, yet the midnight train came all the same. Its engine was blacker than the sky. Its windows glowed faintly with pale light, and the sound of its whistle carried a sadness that pulled at the bones of anyone who heard it. They called it the last train to nowhere. No ticket master stood at its platform. No timetable was posted in the station that had been abandoned for 50 years. And yet, every year, some people climbed aboard. Some were drifters who had nothing to lose. Others were dreamers chasing the unknown. And some were people who had lost everything in this world and longed for another. None were ever seen again. Eleanor Briggs was not a woman who believed in ghosts. At least, that's what she told herself. She was 28, a schoolteacher, and practical to a fault. Yet she could not deny the way her heart trembled whenever she passed a ruined Greystone station on her way home from work. That September night, she walked alone, the full moon painting the world silver. Her father had died 6 months earlier, leaving her an old leather journal full of cryptic notes and sketches. On the last page, in his familiar slanted handwriting, he had written, "If you seek me, wait by the tracks on September's final night. The last train will take you where I am." Eleanor had laughed when she first read it, dismissing it as the ramblings of a grief-stricken man. But now, as the air grew strangely cold and the rusted tracks began to hum beneath her feet, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night. The whistle came, low, sorrowful, endless, and then she saw it. The train glided silently into view, enormous and dark, steam curling like ghostly fingers into the sky. Its wheels turned without touching the rails. Its lanterns glowed with a dim, bluish light. The platform at the ruined station flickered into existence, whole again, as if time itself bent to welcome the train. Doors slid open with a sigh. Without thinking, Eleanor clutched her father's journal and stepped forward. Inside, the train was nothing like the decayed hulk she had imagined. The carriage was lined with velvet seats, chandeliers swinging gently with the rhythm of motion. Passengers had scattered throughout, their faces strangely serene. A man in a soldier's uniform from a war long past stared out the window, lips curved in a faint smile. A young woman in Victorian dress whispered a lullaby to a child cradled in her arms. Across the aisle, a miner with still staining his clothes leaned back with eyes closed, as if in peaceful rest. Every passenger radiated an odd calm, as though they had finally found what they'd been searching for. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. First time, a voice asked. She turned. A tall man in a conductor's cap stood before her. His eyes gleamed silver in the dim light, and though his smile was warm, it carried the weight of centuries. Yes, Eleanor stammered. What is this place? The in-between, the conductor replied gently. This is the train that carries those ready to leave one world and begin anew in another. Not everyone sees it. Fewer still dare to board. My father, she whispered, holding out the journal. He said he'd be here. The conductor tilted his head, as though listening to something only he could hear. Then he pointed toward the far end of the carriage. And there he was. Her father sat by the window, looking exactly as she remembered him. Tired eyes, kind smile, his old hat perched on his knee. Ellie, he said softly, rising to meet her. You found me. Tears blurred her vision. What is this place, Dad? How are you here? Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. I was sick, Ellie. I couldn't stay in the world, you know. But this train, it gave me another chance. Another place, beyond pain, beyond time. It's beautiful. You'll see if you choose to come. Her heart wavered. She wanted nothing more than to follow him, to escape the emptiness that had haunted her since his death. But a shadow of doubt crept in. What happens if I stay on board? She asked the conductor. You'll live, he said simply. Not in your world anymore, but in the realm beyond. No sorrow, no suffering, only peace. And if I leave, then you'll return to the life you know. To grief, yes. To struggle, but also to love, to change, to possibility. Eleanor's breath came in shaky bursts. The passenger sat quietly, watching her with eyes that held no judgment, only understanding. Her father smiled gently. It's your choice, Ellie. Whatever you decide, know that I'm proud of you. She looked at him. At the familiar face she thought she'd lost forever. She longed to step into his embrace and never let go. But then she thought of her students waiting for her in Greystone, of the children who still needed her, of the future that, even in its uncertainty, was still hers to shape. At last, she stepped back. I can't, she whispered. Not yet. Her father's eyes shone with both sadness and pride. He nodded once. Then live, Ellie. Live well. And when your time comes, the train will be waiting. The whistle blew again, mournful and deep. The conductor tipped his cap. Until next time, he said. Eleanor felt the world twist, the velvet seats and glowing lanterns fading away like mist. When she blinked, she stood alone on the crumbling platform. The tracks were silent, the air still. The last train to nowhere was gone. But in her chest, warmth lingered, a promise, a connection that death could not break. From that night on, she no longer feared the strange whistle that drifted over Greystone each September, for she knew that when her time came, the train would return and her father would be waiting by the window, smiling. The weeks after that night blurred into one another. Eleanor returned to her classroom, her students none the wiser about the secret she now carried. She smiled more easily, her voice steadier, though at times when she looked out the window, she thought she could almost hear a faint hum on the air, the memory of wheels turning without rails. She had chosen to stay in the world of the living, yet she was no longer the same. A part of her had glimpsed the veil, and the veil had looked back. One evening, as autumn leaves swirled down the cobblestone streets, Eleanor found herself drawn again to her father's journal. She had left it unopened since her night on the train. Fearing it would reopen wounds she had barely begun to heal. But when she turned the brittle pages, she discovered something she had overlooked before. Scrawled in the margin of a sketch of railway tracks were words faint and hurried, as though written in desperation. The train does not only carry the willing, it hunts those it claims. Her breath caught. She remembered the calm faces on the train, the passengers who seemed so at peace. Yet what if not all of them had chosen to be there? The idea gnawed at her. That night she dreamed of the train again, only this time the whistle was sharper, angry. In her dream she saw a boy no older than 12 running along the tracks, chased by the hiss of steam and the grinding of invisible wheels. She woke with a start, heart pounding, the sound of the whistle still ringing in her ears. The following day, she walked home later than usual, the sky bruised with twilight. Near the station, she noticed a figure sitting on the broken stone wall. A boy, pale and thin, hugging his knees. He looked up at her with wide eyes. "Do you hear it?" he asked. "Hear what?" Eleanor whispered, though she already knew. "The whistle. It's coming for me." Her throat went dry. This boy was no ghost. He was alive, as real as she was. But his words chilled her. She knelt beside him. "What's your name?" "Thomas," he said. "It started last year. I see the light sometimes, out there in the dark. No one believes me." Eleanor placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. The truth struck her then. The train didn't just wait. It chose. It sought out those caught between despair and hope, those vulnerable enough to hear its call. She remembered the conductor's silver eyes, the weight in his voice. Not everyone sees it. That night Eleanor stayed awake, staring at the ceiling as the hours crept toward midnight. When the whistle finally came, low and mournful across the fields, she was ready. She slipped on her coat, clutched the journal to her chest, and hurried back to the station. The train was there, steam curling into the sky, lanterns glowing with that ghostly blue light. The platform shimmered whole again. The doors opened with their familiar sigh. The conductor waited, tipping his cap. "You returned," he said softly. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You told me this train carries those who choose. But that boy, Thomas, he hasn't chosen. You're trying to take him. The conductor's smile faded. The train carries souls at the threshold. Not all doors are closed by choice. Sometimes they are pushed open by pain. "Then let me take his place," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Leave him. Take me instead." The conductor regarded her for a long moment, his silver eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, he shook his head. "It is not yet your time, Eleanor Briggs. You are not on the threshold. You still have roads to walk." "Then I'll fight you," she whispered fiercely. "If you try to take him, I'll fight you." For the first time, the conductor's expression softened, almost sorrowful. "You misunderstand. I do not choose. The train does not hunt. It calls. The boy hears because his heart is heavy. Only decides whether to step aboard." Eleanor's chest ached. She thought of her own choice, the pain of seeing her father again, the temptation to stay. She turned to look past the conductor, and there he was, her father, still seated by the window. His eyes met hers, filled with quiet pride, but he did not beckon. He only watched. The whistle blew again, echoing into the night. Eleanor shook her head, backing away. "Not tonight. Not him. Not me." The conductor tipped his cap once more. "So be it." The door slid shut. The train began to dissolve, its shape thinning into mist until the night was still and empty once again. Eleanor stood trembling on the broken platform, the journal clutched tight. She knew then that her life was no longer just her own. She had been marked by the train, chosen to know its secret, and perhaps her task was not to ride it, not yet, but to guard others from hearing its call too soon. From that night on, she watched the station each year when September's end approached, not for herself, but for others like Thomas, for anyone who might be tempted by the whistle of the last train to nowhere. Thank you for reading Milky Way Sparkles. Your support means everything and keeps the stories alive. Locomotive Open Book.